Sophie Cunningham had never been one to mince words. On or off the court, she carried herself with the same fire that made her a fan favorite, bold, expressive, and completely unapologetic. But on this particular night, as reporters crowded around her after the Fever's intense practice session, there was a flicker of something different in her eyes. Excitement? Nerves? Maybe even a hint of mischief. "I'll just say it," she said, brushing a hand through her ponytail. "Yeah, I asked Caitlin to join Project B. Someone had to shoot their shot." The room erupted with a wave of murmurs and camera flashes. Project B, the new women's basketball super league rumored to blend elite competition with global branding opportunities, had been the sport's swirling mystery for months. Big names were tied to it, silent conversations were being held behind closed doors, and speculation ran wild. But Cunningham's revelation was the first direct confirmation that recruiting had gone straight to the brightest star in the WNBA galaxy, Caitlin Clark. To understand the full weight of that moment, you had to go back a few weeks. It had been a crisp Indianapolis morning after a long stretch of away games, and the Fever players were given a rare pair of hours to breathe. Sophie, energized by caffeine and ambition, approached Caitlin as she left the weight room. The rookie phenom had her headphones around her neck, still glowing with post-workout intensity. "You busy?" Sophie asked. Caitlin glanced at her watch, then shrugged. "Depends. Is this about film or are you about to sell me something?" Sophie laughed, a little too loudly. "Okay, maybe I'm selling you something, but it's big. Like big. They ended up sitting at a small corner table in the practice facility lounge, smoothies in hand, sweat still drying on their shoulders. Sophie lowered her voice in a way that instantly made Caitlin lean in. "Project B is going to change the landscape," Sophie said. "And I want you there." Caitlin blinked, stunned. She'd heard the whispers, of course, everyone had. But the idea of being personally approached felt surreal. "Sophie," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I'm barely adjusting to the WNBA schedule. Now you're talking secret startup leagues." "This isn't a whim," Sophie insisted. "It's forward thinking. It's equity. It's creative control. It's the future." Caitlin raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a trailer for a sci-fi movie." Sophie grinned. "Oh, trust me, it's better than sci-fi." Over the next half hour, Cunningham laid out her pitch in vivid detail. She spoke about the new league's vision: shorter seasons, international arenas, player-driven media partnerships, and salaries that rivaled the highest standards in women's sports. She talked about the potential to reshape narratives, to build something from scratch that wasn't just another league, but a movement. Caitlin listened steadily, occasionally tapping her fingers on the table, deep in thought. There was something magnetic about Sophie's passion. It wasn't just business, it was belief. The kind that pulled people in. "You'd be the centerpiece," Sophie added finally, dropping her voice even lower. "Everyone knows it. They want you. Not just for what you do on the court, but for what you mean off it." Caitlin took a long sip of her smoothie. "That's a lot of responsibility." "Yeah," Sophie agreed. "But it's also a lot of opportunity." The conversation lingered in Caitlin's mind for days afterward. Even though she hadn't given an answer, hadn't even seriously engaged, Sophie's words hovered like a spark waiting for ignition. The Fever were already in the middle of a transformative season, and the idea of leaping into another massive shift almost felt reckless. Yet Caitlin also understood something quietly growing inside her, the desire to shape the game in ways she hadn't fully articulated yet. Back in the present, as Sophie stood before the press with her revelation now public, she didn't look regretful. If anything, she looked relieved. "Why tell us now?" a reporter asked. "Because it's real," Sophie replied. "People think Project B is just rumors or smoke. But the conversations are happening. The momentum is real. And someone like Caitlin? She deserves to know the role she could play." It wasn't lost on anyone how carefully she navigated her words. Sophie never said Caitlin accepted. She never claimed Caitlin was even leaning toward it. What she emphasized, over and over, was possibility. The Fever locker room buzzed with it. Teammates nudged Caitlin jokingly, asking whether she was about to sign a billion-dollar contract or start her own empire. She brushed them off playfully, but there was a private seriousness behind her smile. Later that evening, as the facility lights dimmed and most players had gone home, Caitlin lingered alone on the court. She dribbled softly in the silence, letting the rhythm settle her thoughts. The echo of the ball across the hardwood felt grounding, familiar, something pure in a world suddenly filled with wild propositions and massive expectations. Sophie wandered in, her sneakers scuffing lightly. "Hey," she said, tossing Caitlin a bottle of water. "Didn't mean to blow up your evening by going public." Caitlin caught the bottle effortlessly. "You didn't blow anything up. I know your heart was in the right place." Sophie leaned against the scorer's table. "I just want you to have options. You've earned that." Caitlin dribbled in place, staring at the ball. "Options are good," she murmured. "But right now I'm focused on the fever. On our season." "I get that," Sophie said, nodding. "And letting people know? That's just transparency. They deserve to know how big this conversation is for the sport." The two stood in quiet camaraderie, the court stretching before them like a vast, open page. Whatever the future held, Project B or the Fever's growing dynasty, they knew they were standing on the edge of something sweeping, something none of them could fully predict yet. Caitlin finally looked up. "When the time comes," she said, bouncing the ball softly, "I'll make the choice that feels right. For me. For the game." And Sophie, always bold but unexpectedly gentle in that moment, smiled. "That's all I wanted." The next morning, Indianapolis felt unusually still, as if the city itself was waiting to hear what Caitlin Clark would do next. Headlines had already begun swirling online. Cunningham recruits Clark, Project B knocks on Fever's door, is women's basketball on the verge of another revolution? The buzz was impossible to ignore. Even at breakfast, the Fever staff huddled in low conversations, pretending not to stare when Caitlin walked past with her oatmeal and fruit. But Caitlin, for all the attention suddenly orbiting her, didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt thoughtful. Opportunities like this didn't appear out of thin air. They were the kind of seismic moments athletes waited their whole careers for. Except she was only a rookie, still figuring out where her shoes belonged in the locker room. After practice, the team gathered for a closed-door meeting called by coach sides. The atmosphere was serious but supportive, the kind of environment the Fever had cultivated all season. "Let's be clear," the coach began, looking around the room. "We support conversation. We support exploring your futures. But right now, we're a team. And we stay locked in." Everyone nodded, including Caitlin. She appreciated that. She needed that. When the meeting ended, she stayed back, grabbing a seat on the sideline bench. She stared at her shoes, bright, crisp,